What's going on, guys? This is Rob, and if you're enjoying the content here on my channel, then make sure you hit the like button and make sure you hit subscribe so you can help decide what direction the content on my channel goes in the foreseeable future. Alright, so getting into Secret Empire Part 2, God, this story just gets better and better. I mean, this story is absolutely phenomenal. I feel like it's one of the best stories that's really come out with Captain America in a long time. But again, you know, this really picks up with the aftermath of the destruction of Las Vegas. Now, keep in mind, for the superhero community, they've been holding on by a thread, right? And that's the significance of Secret Empire. That's the basis behind Secret Empire. Secret Empire, I imagine, on some level is supposed to be political. It's supposed to be like a reflection of the modern day politics. I don't worry about that side of it. I just want to enjoy the story for what it is. And the idea of superheroes basically being pushed to the point that they feel like they just literally can't win is very indicative of Old Man Logan, of this just dark atmosphere, this dark future where things are just grim and nobody can really come back from it anymore, specifically in the realm of New York. Keep in mind, we saw in the free comic book day version in Secret Empire #0 that New York was just kind of sucked into the dark realm, you know, so because of that, there's no light here. I mean, it's just this dimension where there's nothing but darkness, and the darkness is permeated by these monsters that seek nothing more than to kill anything they come across. And so all these inhabitants of New York City have just kind of descended into absolute madness. And this is where things get absolutely beautiful, because we initially pick up with really just kind of a handful of those individuals, those heroes that were in New York at the time, that it was whisked away. So Doctor Strange, Iron Fist, Luke Cage, so on and so forth. And it's really kind of cool because it gives these minor heroes a chance to shine. I mean, as cool as Luke Cage is, as cool as Iron Fist is, at the end of the day, they're still pretty low on the totem pole when it comes to like the hierarchy of popular heroes in the realm of Marvel Comics. Honestly, Netflix, you know, whether people loved it or hated it, Netflix shined a lot of light on the character of Iron Fist, where previously people didn't even know who he was. And so again, it was really kind of an interesting concept, but it really also shines a lot of light, no pun intended, on the character of Dagger, because remember, Dagger has the ability to create these sort of psychic hard light constructs, so to speak, but she's basically the only source of light in this dimension of darkness. The reason why is because of the fact that for the character of Doctor Strange, his efforts are almost always on trying to get them out of there. And so he really can't exhaust all of his energies. Instead, Dagger serves as the perfect beacon, as the perfect source of light for anybody who's trying to make their way throughout this city. But the issue with this is that where initially she was able to extend this power for hours and hours and hours and for days on end, it's taking this, you know, psychological toll. Her body's perfectly fine, but the idea of standing at the top of the Empire State Building and just emitting herself as a beacon of light for hours on end is psychologically taxing. And that's one of the great things about Secret Empire, is because it's more than just superheroes fighting superheroes. It's more than just good guys versus bad guys. It's the psychological effect that this has on heroes being put in such weird and strange situations. Not only that, it actually allows villains to shine in a way that they normally never would. And the reason why this happens is because of the fact that we actually pick up with a church, and there's a handful of criminals that kind of break into this church just because of the fact that this church has been getting resources in the form of medicine, different things along those lines. And where some of these hoodlums break in with the intention of robbing this priest, a guy suddenly shows up, kills one of the criminals, and begins going on this amazing monologue. He basically says, you know, why are you here? And the idea is, well, you know, it's you know, we're getting what we want. We were going to give you, you know, your cut of the profits and all that kind of good stuff. But then it's basically revealed to be the Kingpin. And the idea here is that the Kingpin really plays this incredible role. It's almost indicative of the Kingpin from the Netflix Daredevil series, which I love Vincent D'Onofrio's Kingpin. I think he's really one of the best villains that Marvel's ever had in the history of their Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think he's probably the standout villain. But the idea here is that he plays very much the role that we're used to. If you're not familiar with Kingpin, for you, he's probably just a foe of Spider-Man, a foe of Daredevil, and that's really about it. But when writers actually take to task and write him as a great villain, he is something to behold. He is just beautifully done in this particular story. And the reason why is because of the fact that he basically kills these criminals, and he tells the priest, your church is under my protection now. I will make sure that you want for nothing. If you need medicine, I will give you the medicine you need. If you need food, I will give you the food that you need. If you need water, if you need any kind of resources, I will be there to give it to you. But when everything comes back to normal, when we get back to the normal state of things, keep in mind who it was that kept you alive. Now, this is how Wilson Fisk works in a lot of different ways. Wilson Fisk, in a lot of instances, will just like strong arm his way into stuff, right? Like he'll just show up and just be like, and this is mine now. But in some instances, he'll he'll just kind of work his way in and he'll intertwine himself into these particular scenarios and then basically start calling in favors later on down the line. But what this also does is it creates a measure of loyalty. It's really some people for the, in this instance, who will look at Kingpin and say, well, he's not nearly as bad as I thought he was. I mean, he helped to keep us alive. He made sure that we had the resources that we need. He kept bandits and criminals away from us. I mean, we don't really owe him so much as we respect him in the way that we're going to make sure that we uphold our end of the bargain, that we treat him with this measure of respect. And so it really turns into something akin to affection, more so than like loyalty or the belief that he's somehow owed something. And so because of this, we kind of transition out of this dark realm and we actually pick up with Tony Stark himself. Now, again, one of the cool things about Secret Empire is it very much picks up on the state of the Marvel Universe at this point in time. And coming out of Civil War II, regardless of, whether you love him or hate him, Tony Stark was just one half of the argument with Carol Danvers on the character of Ulysses. Again, I have that Civil War II video down in the description. We're not going to go too far into it. Civil War II is not a very good story, but the idea here is that Tony Stark made his own enemies among the superhero community. But the events of Secret Empire do not distinguish which side anybody was on. It's not like Captain America said, okay, I'm taking sides and we're going to start splitting people up. So the people who are going to be, siding with Tony Stark or who are going to be stuck here with Tony Stark are going to be the same ones who supported him during the events of Civil War II. It's not like that. When the events of Secret Empire popped off and Captain America made his move and he started just checkmate after checkmate after checkmate and shutting down all these different superhero groups, just eradicating them or imprisoning them or whatever the case may be, it ultimately meant that it was just superheroes scattering for the winds and hiding as best they could. And so what it meant is that at that point, following the events of Civil War II, Tony Stark in a lot of ways was surrounded by enemies. This is also compounded by the fact of just Tony Stark's history. Superior Iron Man, where he was just an absolute dick to everybody. His history of alcoholism, his actions during the first Civil War. Tony Stark has consistently made enemies among the superhero community on a lot of different instances. And so because of that, a lot of those enemies really haven't let those issues go. They haven't really walked away and said, yeah, bygones be bygones. It doesn't really work that way. For a lot of people, they still absolutely hate him. And so what he does is he basically kind of calls this truce and he says, okay, look guys, I know a lot of you guys don't believe me. I know a lot of you guys don't really think that I'm a guy who's trustworthy. That's fine. Let's let Rick Jones speak. And of course, Rick Jones recorded this message, before he had died. But the cool thing about this is that Rick Jones is positioned as this one guy that everybody trusts because he was the last guy to shout Avengers Assemble. He was the one guy who wouldn't give ground, who wouldn't give up, who wouldn't walk away from the idea of what it meant to be a superhero. And so the result of this is that what Rick Jones basically does is get us caught up on everything that had happened so far. That, S.H.I.E.L.D. was messing around with recreating a cosmic cube. The cosmic cube was just a fragment, or I guess a combination of different fragments from other cosmic cubes. The result was that one of these fragments belonged to a cosmic cube that the Red Skull had previously attained. When the cosmic cube was reformed and the whole Pleasant Hill event kicked off and all that kind of good stuff, and the Avengers and the media became aware of the fact that S.H.I.E.L.D. was basically tricking the minds of different villains into believing that they were in a paradise when they really weren't. When the Assault on Pleasant Hill event took place, and Kabak had basically gone through and began the process of de-aging Steve Rogers and changing his entire backstory at the whims of the Red Skull, then ultimately it set all these events in motion that allowed Captain America to operate behind the scenes without anybody ever knowing he was a Hydra agent in the first place. Now the kicker to this is that where Kabak had eventually gone on to join the Thunderbolts under Bucky Barnes, this led to a direct conflict between Captain America and Bucky Barnes. Captain America killed Bucky Barnes. He also killed the Red Skull. And then in turn, Eric Selvig, the guy who was basically the science head next to Captain America working alongside of him, basically dispersed the shards of the Cosmic Cube all across the world, just because of the fact that the idea was that Captain America was going to take this Cosmic Cube and make Hydra a reality. That is to say, alter, the very fabric of reality itself so that Hydra was in charge of everything. It was basically going to speed boost his way all the way up to the top. And so the result is that with these shards kind of scattered all throughout the world, now it's a hunt for the shards of the Cosmic Cube. It's almost akin to Dragon Ball Z and the Dragon Balls. Everybody's hunting for these shards of the Cosmic Cube. The result is that where Tony Stark and his forces, in the midst of mustering themselves together in order to race off and achieve this goal, Captain America is doing the exact same thing. Remember, Steve Rogers is none too happy about the idea that he had to display this extreme show of force by wiping out Las Vegas, but it was necessary for him to do that, or at least for him to order it done, for the very purpose of showing the fact that he's willing to do whatever it takes in order to make sure that Hydra stays in control. Now, the other half of this is, remember, Baron Zemo is like his man in the corner. I mean, this is his right-hand man. Baron Zemo will basically carry out virtually any task that Captain America asks him to. And that's why Captain America goes to Baron Zemo and says, I want you to track down the shards of the Cosmic Cube. I want you to leave no stone unturned, none. Do whatever you have to, kill whoever you have to, but do what needs to be done and get me this shard of the Cosmic Cube. Now, the other half of this is that we actually pick up about 24 hours after all this in Colorado. And the reason why is because of the fact that Natasha Romanoff had basically raced off with the intention of both, grabbing these shards and at the same time trying to track down and kill Captain America. The issue with this is that she's eventually located by the champions themselves. And this is really cool because the champions basically go to her and say, look, you have a level of training that we couldn't even begin to comprehend. And that's true. With Natasha Romanoff, she's got no powers, but she does have prodigious training when it comes to espionage. I mean, she's really the world's greatest assassin. And so because of that, the champions going to her is basically saying, look, we need you to train us in a way that we've never been trained before. We've been trained to defend. We've been trained to stop threats. What we need is training on how to kill threats. And this again is designed to show us that there's just this tipping point, this point at which everything just kind of switches, that it's not necessarily the superhero landscape that we're used to anymore, that things have gotten darker, things have gotten grittier. More so than that, things have gotten desperate for the superhero community. And so because of this, what ends up happening here is we basically have Natasha Romanoff simply saying, welcome to the Red Room. That's what we're going to do. We're basically going to switch over to this idea that I'm going to train you in the exact same way that I was trained. So it's really kind of a cool concept. But in the midst of all this, what we do is we actually switch to this weird location, this weird place, which we now know as the Vanishing Point. But the idea here is that there's just some chick just kind of running for her life. You guys will notice the art style is distinctly different. This girl's running for her life, right? Just kind of fleeing these weird things. It looks like members of the Serpent Society or what have you. Once they actually descend on her and they intend to kill her, these guys are all defeated by some unnamed person. But when this person is addressed by this woman, when she asks, who are you and what do you want? This man simply answers by saying, my name is Steve Rogers and I'm just trying to get home. With that being said, guys, we're gonna go ahead and bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explain, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoyed this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Peace.